Except those that don't even read and say,
you are.
get rid of all
We have a screen. We do have a screen in here. That's right.
All right, welcome everybody. And sorry for a little delay here. We had a little executive meeting here beforehand, so thank you for your patience. We're going to open the regular session of the Urban Renewal Commission meeting here for Thursday, November 9th, 2017. Do we need to take a little roll call here, don't we?
Yes. So Commissioner Holliday,
Here.
Commissioner Mengelberg. Here. Commissioner Ide.
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Van Haverbeek.
Here.
Oh. Okay. Say that one more time. Sorry about that.
Here.
Okay, thank you. And Chair Shaw.
Here. And I want you to feel sorry for Commissioner Van Haverbeek. He's calling in from Hawaii tonight, okay? Okay.
Aloha.
Hello, thank you, Steve, yeah. So everybody okay with the agenda this evening?
Yes.
Moving on to general business, the 4A 17-587, the Cove Project, Phase 2 proposal. And we're going to have Mr. Eric Underwood start us off here this evening.
Before we start, did you?
Yes.
I think it was it a public comment under?
Oh, I'm sorry, we do have a citizen comment here.
And we have
Thank you,
one.
Tony.
One.
We have one citizen comment, Mr.
Other than the agenda item?
Well, that's, yeah, so if this is, concerns the item in front of us right now, we'll do it at that time. If it's not related to this item this evening, you're okay to speak now. That would be Matthew Rigg.
Yeah, it's related to the Cove.
Okay, so we'll bring it up when we bring this up here, okay? Thank you. All right, thank you, Tony. All right, so Mr. Underwood?
Okay, thank you, Chair Shaw. A new proposal for Phase 2 of the Cove project was submitted by the project developers to the Urban Renewal Commission in August of 2017. Upon the Urban Renewal Commission's initial review of the proposal, there were some additional questions that needed to be asked, and the commission directed staff to invite the project developers to come to a detailed presentation. And as per that direction, the project developers will be giving that presentation here tonight and will be available to answer any questions you might have. So with that, I would turn it over to them at this point.
All right, so we have a spokesperson for the project this evening.
Yes.
And name and where you're from there,
Sure.
please.
My name is Colin Kehoe. I'm with the development team, Hudson. Just want to thank you, commissioners, for giving us the opportunity to present our vision, our concept for Phase 2 of the Cove.
City of residence for the record, please.
Sorry?
City of residence for the record.
Residence.
City.
Where you from?
Where are you from?
Oh, sorry. I said my residence.
Yes.
Sorry. Vancouver, Canada.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Our basic intent is to provide quality rental apartments, which are in high demand in the market right now. These will be supported by a public plaza, a public esplanade, which is connected to a network of walking and bicycle trails. In addition, there'll be a public amphitheater in the North Park. There's a couple of things I wanted to say here. So there'll be a broad range of units, including live-work units. They're all going to have one or component which is secure underground parking, and all the buildings will have elevator access to them, secure again. We have with us here tonight Lloyd Hill, which I'm sure you all know, from Hill Architects. We have Stephen Shapiro, if I'm saying that right, Shapiro, yeah, from Shapiro Didway Landscape Architecture. They're going to be presenting and showing you the project as a whole. We also have Scott Watson from Greystar, the property management. We were hoping to have someone from Deacon, who's the construction company. They're on their way, but they're not here right now. They'll be here as well. So, and then representing the senior financing, we have Rob Affleck from Bacadia. So I suppose firstly I'd call on Scott Watson, if he can maybe come up, say a few words. He's from Greystar, which is the largest fee property manager in the US, and they have over 400,000 apartments under management. So he's going to say a few words about the market, the renter profile, and the amenities in the project. Thank you. Thanks, Scott.
I've been told I have 2 minutes, so I'm going to go quickly through this. The Portland apartment market has been red hot for 7, 8 years now. It's in the downtown area in a little bit of an overbuilt condition, and we're seeing a lot of units that have been brought into the market, leasing up slowly, whatnot. So we're seeing less pressure on rent increases and whatnot that have been kind of the black eye of our industry, making it unaffordable for the average renter. This is not an average project. This is a project that doesn't exist in Clackamas County, and it really is an opportunity at a gorgeous site to bring a truly full amenitized modern apartment experience to Oregon City, Clackamas County, because you have residents within your community that are looking for housing like this. They want to stay in their hometown. They want to stay in the Clackamas County area. And there isn't housing for them to, say, move down out of the family home, enjoy an elevator from the garage up to their apartment so that they don't have to climb the stairs anymore. There's plenty of working professionals in your community that would love to have the Cove access and take advantage of restaurants at the site and whatnot. The inflow of population to the Portland metropolitan area has been on the order of 30,000 souls for the last 2 or 3 years, and it's supposed to continue at that pace. We are nowhere building apartment homes or any kind of housing close to that scale to keep up with it. We may be in an overbuilt position in the downtown core, but that's likely to solve itself with the changes that the city has brought on in the downtown core pretty near term. This presents a great opportunity for people to, maybe they don't want to be in the downtown core, but they'd like to have this opportunity to rent a high quality apartment home. Colin, I don't know what more you want me to say. I think I'm up against my 2 minutes.
Thank you, Scott. Yep. So I think now we'll maybe have Lloyd and Steve. I don't know if you want to present together or maybe just Lloyd, whatever works best for you, but they'll come and present the project.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Lloyd.
Commissioners, my name's Lloyd Hill. I live in West Lynn, Oregon.
Forgive you for that.
Forgive me. My architectural office is also in West Lynn, and I know Oregon City residents are very proud of their heritage. I'm a 5th generation. My family was on a wagon train in 1853, and they didn't come to Oregon City. They ended up at the south end of the valley taking the very first wagon train that went over the Cascades. There was no road, and they ended up getting saved in October by mules and horseback and brought over. So there's a long history there, and I'm a native-born Oregonian here. I'm very excited to be presenting this project to you tonight. We have been involved on and off working on this site now for longer than I would like to admit. We've been involved with a number of different proposals. You've seen different proposals over the years. I can assure you that having worked on many similar projects, including the prior proposals for the Cove, this is head and shoulders the best proposal that's been put forth. And I think it's, if I do say so myself, I think it's an outstanding adaptation to the challenges of the site. And if it is realized in this form, I think it will be a true asset to the community. So can we maybe dim the lights and drop the screen?
Remember in the 60s, you're watching Star Trek, and they would have those little panels that they would do stuff on.
do we need these lights left on? Is that good? Okay.
No, we're fine. I'm fine.
All right, good.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't have to take notes.
The Cove Waterfront Residences, we're at a point where we haven't really named the project or the buildings, so we've got some really exciting building names like A North and A South and B North and B South. But I assure you that there will be, working with Graystar and the development team, some, very interesting names that come up as we move forward with this.
Maybe you could run that as a school project.
We could, yeah. We could do a survey. So this is our overall master plan for the project site. I think you're familiar with it. The phase 1 project here is under construction now. We're also the architects for that. We've been working with Grand Peaks Properties on that project. 244 units. The first buildings are getting framed up to the roof now, and they'll be coming online this next summer. You may wonder, gosh, 244 units is a lot. Is it too much to do, another almost 400 units next door? These projects are differentiated. I think Scott mentioned the garden apartments are walk-ups. They're exterior stairs. These units are some similar in sizes, some smaller, some bigger. But we have elevators and underground parking and other amenities that the phase 1 doesn't have. So the project's divided into 5 phases. Phase 2 and 3 really are designed together, but the way the DDA agreement has been amended, working with the attorneys, it refers to phase 2 and phase 3, so we've left it that way. Phase 2 would be the initial tranche of funding and the first 6 buildings, the 2 A buildings on either side of a central plaza, the 2 B buildings and C buildings, which are nearly identical, similar with just slightly different unit mixes. And then this is an example of a sign. We have a curved stone wall right near the entrance to the project that will have uplit, that will announce the Cove Waterfront project, and there'll be an Esplanade as part of this phase 2 project. There'll be a central plaza, which I'll just flash through a few quick images. It's designed so that it can accommodate events like farmers markets or antique car shows or crafts fairs, that sort of thing. There'll be some decomposed granite paving and some hard paving and water features and other elements that we'll show you in the renderings that we've come up with. These are just precedent images that show the sort of influences that were inspirations for us. Phase 3 is the last 2 buildings at either end of the waterfront parcel here. And the intent of the developers is for those to start immediately and continue on. So it's not intended to not be committed to building them all, but it's a big project and it'll take some time to build. And so this would be the second tranche of financing for these 2 buildings. Phase 4 is the water quality mitigation plan, which exactly how that happens and so forth, I don't know that all the details have been worked out. We think it's critical to have the water quality addressed here for this kind of investment. The algae bloom that happened a couple of summers ago, we need to make sure it doesn't happen again. And I think this phase 4 water quality mitigation thing will solve that. And then finally, phase 5 is at the north and the south end of the waterfront, and we've actually dubbed there's a water sports center at the north end adjacent to the North Park. There are existing pilings in the water, and I think we can build the docks that are proposed here with only a handful of new pilings, just using existing pilings. There would be a observation platform. There's a big cluster of pilings that's elevated, so we proposed an observation platform that's a little above the Esplanade. At the North Park, there's already an area that's been excavated down just above mean high water, elevation 18 feet. In order to balance the cut and fill on the site, that'll be excavated a little bit more, and it will create what we're calling the North Beach as part of the the Phase 5, it'll be graded so that there's a sandy beach that goes down into the water, which we understand is a good thing for the fish habitat. And at the south end of the site, I'll back up here. At the south end of the site, there's a similar area that we'll be excavating out. One of the challenges on this site is balancing the floodplain. We for every yard of dirt that we bring in to fill in Agnes or to fill in the parking lots in front of the building, we have to dig a hole that's just that big. And the earlier schemes that had been proposed, there had been a plan to any excess hole that we couldn't dig on our site, we would dig over here on the Phase 4 site, which would be part of the water mitigation plan. But it does create some phasing challenges. Right now, there's a parking lot over here, and if we have to dig a big hole over here, then you can't leave that temporary parking. And so I think we've come up with a plan where we can actually build more parking here and leave that in place temporarily, and then expand it during Phase 4. And part of that is digging some more on this corner, which creates another beach opportunity, which we're dubbing South Beach. So now we have Miami covered. We've got North Beach and South Beach. So there'll be accessible pathways that lead down to these beaches that will be flat enough. You don't need to have handrails. They'll be handicap accessible. Sand that goes down into the water. Right now, there's a path that the triathletes use to get down and get in and out. It's not accessible, and it's a little bit, it's not the greatest. We're hoping that there'll be, kayaks and paddle boards and other kinds of non-motorized watercraft using the water. See the sandy beach, here, adjacent to this dock is very similar to what we're proposing on our plan, with a gangplank that connects over, during summer low water, and some ways to get kayaks and things in and out of the water. And then we also have another gangway which is elevated higher, so you can have access during when the water level is higher at other times of year. There may also be, a very Portland thing is natural playgrounds. And without spending too much money, you can pile up some rocks and logs and things and end up with a really cool place for kids to play outside. Next, okay. And it might include a dry creek bed for the kids to play in, that sort of thing. This would all be part of Phase 5. And Phase 5, we're not doing it as part of Phase 3 because it gets into the water, and the permitting associated with it can be very difficult and time consuming, and we can't have that as a potential obstacle to being able to move forward with construction of Phase 3. This is an observation platform. We have the pilings, we're thinking that there might be something, maybe not exactly like this, but this sort of thing elevated up above the cove, so it's in this location right here. So here we are with the master plan, the big, long master plan that was on the wall that's about a half-mile long along the cove. And we will enter from Main Street, either from Highway 99 W or under the overpass here. This is where that curved wall with the sign will be on it, here. The earlier designs we really didn't have a concept figured out for the middle part of the site. As you may or may not recall, there was a proposal to do commercial development in the middle part of the site here. And there was also an agreement with Tri-Cities for a long-term lease for parking that would be on the other side of Agnes. Well, one of the things that's happened is the Tri-Cities reconsidered that long-term lease, and they'll only do a 20-year lease, which just isn't a long enough commitment to allow for financing for a commercial project. So the development team has been forced to reassess doing just a commercial-only thing in the center here. And I think what we've come up with will be a wonderful amenity for the site. It will include restaurants, the outdoor plaza that we talked about before, some retail, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 square feet of retail, as well as the community center facilities for the project itself. So we talked before about the cut and fill balance, and Colin talked about having the garage underneath the buildings. You may recall that 7 or 8 years ago there was a plan that had garages under the buildings, and it didn't work. ultimately because it was so much more expensive to build that than it was to have parking on grade. And so there were a number of plans that have been put forward and reviewed and approved through the city that had parking on grade. Oops, I'm sorry. Let me back up one here. That had parking on grade, in between Agnes and the buildings. From an architecture and a planning point of view, that may be less expensive, but you end up with a sea of parking right at the front door of your building, and it's not really very nice. So what the development team, really led by Hudson Holdings from Vancouver, has pushed very hard and really tried to figure out a way to make this underground parking work. And so what is making it, possible to do this? It's still very expensive, but the red line represents the approximate existing grade that's out at the site. And the black line is the proposed grade. And so as you see here, conceptually, what we're doing is bringing out the heavy equipment, and we're digging dirt here and moving it over here. So if we had parking, if we didn't have parking under the building, we would either have to fill in the additional site here to do foundations on grade, or else we'd have a big crawl space that was empty. So that's really one of the keys to this plan, is this underground parking. So the way the parking works, the site's divided into a north section and a south section. And each of the sections has two entrance points to the garages. There's an entrance exit here and an entrance exit here. And there's a circular, one-way kind of a loop at either end of either garage. So if you get in and you go to one end, you can turn around and go back, or you can go out the entrance. So we do have these 4 entrance points. I'll show you how that works on the site plan. 3 of them come through the surface parking lot directly from Agnes, and the 4th one enters from the turnaround circle, the fire truck turnaround circle that's down at the North Park at the north end here. So there's just slightly less than 400 units proposed here, and the parking here is a little over 400 units. So there'll be enough parking to have an assigned parking stall for each unit, which is directly under the building that you're living in. So you won't have to walk very far to get to your elevator to go upstairs. So at the center of the building, of the project, the 2 buildings, we're calling them the A North and A South building. This is A South. They front onto Agnes Street. This is Agnes down here. And one of the things that we've done that's a little different than the prior designs is we've proposed street parking on Agnes. If any of you are familiar with the Lakeview Village project in Lake Oswego, they have angled parking in front of Zeppo. It used to be Zeppo's and some of the restaurants there. That's the vibe that we're after here. There's street parking along Agnes Street. There'll be enough parking here, plus a little bit of parallel parking on the other side to adequately serve the 2 big restaurants that we have here, plus the retail shops that are here. The community center is really the hub of the amenities for the residents here. And I think there'll be a small leasing office adjacent to the community center. The community center will have outdoor, I've got some slides of examples of things, but it'll have some outdoor seating, some of which is covered, fire tables and so forth, a pool with a pool deck for sun loungers, some more outdoor covered seating as part of the pool deck, an outdoor grill, a fitness center, shower and bathrooms and that sort of thing. And the sort of vibe that we're trying to hit, this is surface parking, this angled parking at Lakeview Village, an example of that. We're not necessarily proposing doing it brick and granite and old-fashioned bollards. We actually think that maybe the target market here, it's a little bit more of a hip modern vibe. That we're hoping to do in a classical way that will really fit into Oregon City and the history here. So the outdoor areas might have outdoor fire elements and that sort of thing. Here's an example of a fitness center in the ground level of a building. So it would have this about this size and this kind of amenities here. Here's an example of a kitchen that's part of a community center thing, where if you're having a 50th birthday party or something and you want to reserve the space. You can reserve the community center and throw your party there. Here's an example. Well, this is actually an example of one of the apartment rooms that were the kind of vibe that we're hoping to accomplish with the apartments. So on the other side of the plaza, we have the A North building, and the A North building is some ground level retail that faces the plaza and faces the parking here. And then there are two restaurants. There's about a 3,500 or so square foot, what we're calling a formal restaurant that also has a sizable outdoor patio with wonderful views out to the cove. And there's a more casual restaurant that's about the same size that also has some covered seating and an outdoor bar that could be covered and an outdoor grill area that could be covered. We think this might be perhaps a brew pub or something like that. And we haven't identified restaurant operators. We're talking to some, but it's possible this might be the same operator that has two different kinds of restaurants that serve two different kinds of markets here. So that's the A buildings at the center. And let me see what else to. So here's an example. This is over at Lakeview Village, some of the outdoor seating, next to Lakeview Village. Next slide. Here's this is kind of the vibe that we're after, overlooking the cove here, with low landscaping and a gentle sloping down, and tables that'd be inside seating that's elevated just a little higher so you can see out over the top. Here's an example of sort of a modern outdoor deck overlooking the water. Here's a interior from a current unit similar to what we're talking about. This is actually the community center image here. It got shuffled into the wrong place. So this is the kind of vibe that we're thinking of for the community center that is kind of a lounge where people can come and hang out. And there'd be package delivery and mail would be here at the community center, so people would be coming and going and meeting their neighbors and so forth. Here's a residential kitchen. So here we are. I'm going to walk you through. We've got a series of about 15 or 20 or so renderings that we've done from a computer model for this. And if you look on the image, I'm going to flash through an image like this for each of them. It'll show you the little diagram here indicates where this is, where the view is rendered from. So this first view is a view as you're driving in on Agnes Street just before you get to the plaza. And so on the left, there's the parallel parking. We've got some bicycles in a bicycle shop here. There'll be signage and so forth, for the retail things. And you just see the Festival Plaza here and the crosswalk that crosses over just beyond, and then the D North building beyond. So the next shot is just moving down just across from Festival Plaza, and we're looking at what we're calling the D North building. It's ground level retail and restaurants, and then 3 levels of units over the top. And this Festival Plaza features a prominent water feature here. We don't know if it's going to be, a big columnar granite thing or some other kind of a sculptural thing. We think it wants to have some scale and be a robust kind of a water feature. We've got a concept that has a water source happening in the center of the plaza that leads visually out to the cove. And I'll show you how that works. So the next view is more or less from the same spot, but we're turned looking more towards the plaza. So you get a sense for the scale of the plaza here. And if you've been to the farmer's market in Lake Oswego, the plaza that's in is not so different in scale. This is maybe just a little bit smaller than that, but it's about the same. We've got 80 feet between the buildings here and about 120 feet between the buildings here. And those proportions are very intentional in order to create spaces that don't feel too enclosing, that create the right kind of a feel for the project. We have, bosques of trees, a grid of trees on either side of the plaza here with, there would be decomposed granite under here so that if you have events, you can set up your booths and so forth right on that. You might have bocce ball set up or that sort of thing for the residents to use here. So moving in a little bit further into the plaza here, we're about halfway into the plaza, and you see On the right, we have a gently sloping ramp that goes down. There are two water features, one on either side of the ramp, that have a water source that comes out from under what looks like a bridge, but it's really just concrete that has a pumping system that pumps the water out and it recirculates, either from the cove or internally. We haven't worked out the details yet. So there are 3 steps down, and then there are some concrete seat walls here. So during the day, this will be a wonderful place to sit and contemplate, maybe read a book or something. And you see this is the access down to the entrance to the community center on the left, and the entrance to the fine dining restaurant is on the right. The next view is from more or less the same kind of location, a little bit more in the center, looking out. And the next view is looking back. We've gone down the plaza a little ways, so we're looking back towards Festival Plaza. We're just outside the entrance to the community center. And here, the next view, we're looking directly across. So this is the entrance to the fine dining. And you see the outdoor seating here for the fine dining restaurant, which is 2 or 3 steps down lower than the plaza elevation that we're at. So moving along, we're going to jump out and go to a little bit more elevated viewpoint here. So we're just a little bit south of the plaza. This is the D South building. This is the pool plaza. That's the amenities for the residents here. And the way this is designed, there's a gentle slope that goes from the Esplanade up towards the pools, and then we have a 6-foot-high fence here, which you have to have for health department. But it's designed so that the top of the fence is only 1.5 feet above the paving here. So if you're sitting in the spa, you can look out and see the cove, and you don't have a fence blocking your view. And if you're at the sun loungers, you can look up and you can look right out and see what's happening with the view. Beyond is the outdoor seating and fire tables and so forth here. So I'll back up here and show you. So this, I'm not sure this is, okay. So this, the location here, this is taken from a balcony at the end of the B South building looking over the pool plaza. So the trees have been sized in such a way that they're low enough that you can see over them from the second story, but they're high enough to provide privacy for the people that are down on the pool. This is the outdoor grill area with tables and a grill that you can use in the evenings, and if you want to come down and hang out with your buddies. So next. So the next view, we've moved up just close to what we're calling the Amphitheater Plaza at the Esplanade. And so we're just right in front. So you see here, there's a gentle sidewalk that slopes up. This is flat enough that you don't have to have handrails. This is part of that water feature that starts in the center of Festival Plaza and passes under 2 or 3 bridges and then comes down and it disappears under this bridge. And so this will either be recirculated, or if we can work out the details with fish and wildlife and so forth, it might be pumped from the cove all the way up and then all the way back down. So, you notice there aren't handrails or guardrails. As long as we keep the grade within, that's off the edge here, less than 2.5 feet down, and we have a little curb so you can't run your walker or your wheelchair off the edge, we don't have to put guardrails. So we're trying to keep it open and, avoid having, kind of clunky guardrails. So we're calling this the Amphitheater Plaza. If you see, there are 2 or 3 steps up in a seat wall here, and then there's another 2 or 3 steps in a seat wall, and another 2 or 3 steps in a seat wall. And there's a concrete plaza here, which is big enough for if you had music or some kind of a little performance. You can have quite a few people sitting on the steps and enjoying something happening here. So this is all part of what we think will be a wonderful public amenity that this project brings to the city. So this is a view from, we're sitting in the covered, we're actually just inside the community center looking out over the covered seating here. And we, in the commuter model, we put all the furniture in, pulled into the tables, and then we couldn't get the people to sit in them. So we've got people sitting around the fire table outside here, but we couldn't put people and dogs and things in here. But there will be, and there will be heat lamps, so you can use it in the spring and the fall. And this would be a very similar sort of a space to what happens in the restaurant on the other side. So moving along, now we're standing kind of in the middle of the Amphitheater Plaza, right at the center of the site, and we're looking to the north. And so here you can just pick up on the left the Phase 5 Water Sports Center out here, and you can just pick up the viewing platform here. But you see this sweep of the Esplanade, which some of the earlier designs, the Esplanade sort of curved around a little bit. We've put a very intentional, gentle curve, and so it slopes. Here we're at about elevation 42 or so, and it slopes down at 4.8% to a little landing. And at each landing, it widens out, and there's some beautiful cherry trees. And then it slopes down a little bit more to the next landing, and it goes down to about elevation 34, which is where we need to be in order to grade the slope here and do the right cut and fill and so forth. But we've provided shade trees on the right side to provide privacy from people and to make it feel right. So here you see on the right, this is the formal dining outdoor patio area here, similar to what I showed you before. We'll move forward just a little bit down, so this is about halfway down to the next area here. So you can see now we're down 5 or 6 feet below where the dining area is here. And this is the outdoor restaurant patio for the more informal restaurant next to it here. And you see this is one of our B-C buildings, to the right. So these buildings, we've intentionally created corner windows in the corners of the units at the ends. And you go back to the next unit, there's also a corner window here. And if you go to the middle, there's also corner units here. So these units have sweeping views, 180 degrees or nearly 180 degrees from the majority of the units. And the way these buildings have been designed, they're corridors, and so half the building is sort of on the side away from the cove, and the other half is on the side towards the cove.
Wait, are you going to get into the, I know these are kind of live-work units? Mm-hmm. And you're going to get into that? Or?
I can show you the live-work units here in just a minute. Okay. Sure. So this building, I think, has 60 units in it. And out of those units, 75 or 77% of them have views out to the cove. So there's only a few units that are in the middle on the back that look out the other way. And that's actually provides a differentiation in the market. The water view units will be more expensive, so we'll have a mix of rental rates here, some of them more expensive and some less expensive. And we've noticed we've also popped up the heights on the top floor. The top floor units will have premium fixtures in them. This is a 12 or a 14-foot high ceiling in your living room with wide overhanging eaves here. This is a 4-foot wide eave to shade and prevent getting too much afternoon sun in the units. That's another way that we're differentiating. The upper units will have more expensive rent and fancier, more expensive appliances and so forth. So the next view that we have, we're actually in one of the corner windows at the end of this B North building looking back towards the restaurant plaza. And so the restaurant plaza has the covered seating that wraps around the inside of the L of this A North building, but it also has a pavilion in the middle, which could be an outdoor bar with bar seating all the way around and heat lamps and so forth. And there's another little pavilion here, which could be an outdoor cooking area for grilling and that sort of thing. And if you look over here, it's ramps down gently, and there are 2 or 3 fire tables and tables that have views under the overhanging branches here out to the cove. So the next view is a view just moved over just a little bit. You're on the balcony in the same unit from a slightly different vantage point looking down. And then if we jump back over to the end of the A North building, there's a balcony here. This unit is not on the waterfront. it's back on the side of the cove. But here's the view out of the balcony of that unit. So you don't have a 360-degree view of the cove, but you do get a little peekaboo view of the cove. And this will give you a good feel for the on-site surface parking here. It's been designed in a very regular pattern with 8 cars that are sort of surrounded with trees on all sides. And the live-work units that Brian mentioned are on this part of the B and the C buildings on either side. There are 2 units on either side of the center of the building, which here is a view of the C North building from the parking lot. So this would be an entrance to one of the live-work units here. And so the live-work unit is a flat that has a kitchen, living, dining room, bedroom, bathroom downstairs. And then it also has an outside door that goes into a big room that could be used as a therapist's office or a tax accountant's office or an architect's office or, you name it. I think there are a lot of things that could happen here. Convenient parking, right outside the door. There's 1-car parking for every unit downstairs. The additional parking for the units is in this parking lot here. And then just on the other side of the sidewalk here, there's street parking for if there's an event at the North Park and you need parking. We've provided quite a bit of street parking here, which has not been part of the prior plans. So we're going to jump back to the other side of the project. We were just over here, and we've jumped out onto the viewing platform here. So this viewing platform, there's a cluster of about 25 or 30 pilings that are all in the same location here, and it sticks up pretty high. And so we have designed this with a gentle sloping sidewalk that comes out and a short bridge that would come over to this viewing platform. And you can see a ramp that goes down to the boating dock here. And you see this is the C North building here. This would be part of Phase 5, but we think it could be a very cool place. If you turn and you look the other way from the viewing platform, now we're looking at the other part of building C North, and this is building D North, which is the building that faces onto the North Park. And you see the Esplanade here is gently sloping up. It goes from about 32 or 3 up to about 40 at the turnaround circle here at the end of right next to the North Park. And there's an outdoor pavilion, an outdoor sort of a sun terrace barbecue area with a little viewing pavilion at both of the D buildings, at both ends of the site, which if you live in the unit here, it's a long ways to go down to the community center. So there's another outdoor area, right close by with outdoor barbecue and a pavilion that you can.
And Lloyd, that was the first one. That's the first phase you're going to start. Is that building?
This is phase 3. The 2 D buildings at the end are phase 3, and the only difference between phase 2 and 3, it's the same developer, we're going to get approval all at the same time. Yeah. It's just a different financing tranche, and that's.
You're going to start the buildings on the ends first.
Actually, we're going to start with the buildings in the middle first.
Oh, I thought you said you were starting.
Yeah, originally we were thinking we might start at the end, but so does anybody know the story about the dueling railroads up the Deschutes River? So I don't know, is Deacon here now? Have they arrived? So we've got SD Deacon on board as the contractor for the project, and they're exploring partnering with Hudson Holdings as possibly an investor in the project as well. So their concept, we want to build this fast. So and it's such a big project, 400 units. They're sort of doing a north team and a south team. And so they're going to both start and see who wins, who can finish first.
Nice.
So that would be, the first phase. And during the first phase, there'll be a temporary sort of a curved ramp that goes down to get under the garage while this is under construction, but that'll get taken out when it's finished. So here we are, we're sort of back to the south of the project, just right near the North Park, looking back, and we're at an elevated position. So you see, here the parking wraps around the D North building and it slopes down to the turnaround here. And this is where the vehicular entrance sort of enters in and out of the garage here. Then there's a pedestrian entrance that goes in and out of the garage, and then there's an entrance that goes into the stair that leads up to the building. And you see in the center here, this is a little covered pavilion with outdoor gas heaters that you could have a cocktail or eat your dinner at in the evenings. And here we're sloping from about 40 down to 32 and then back up in the middle. And this is the Phase 5 trail that will lead down to the North Beach here. And it's a nice, gentle, less than 5% slope kind of a trail. So we're getting close to the end here. So this view is at the corner of the North Park, looking at the entrance to the D North building here. And there's actually a ramp and a slope sidewalk and a crosswalk that leads you right across here that our modelers didn't quite get into the computer model yet. So that's a quick tour of the proposed design for the Cove Waterfront Phase 2 and 3. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
Got a question, Brian.
Some lights.
When the questions start.
Okay. Let's, Commissioner Mildenberg, please.
I have two questions. One is on the live-work units. Are they single-story or are they 2 stories?
We've explored both options, and it could be either way. We're sort of leaning towards doing the 1-story option to keep it in flats all on the same level. It's just a little simpler to build, and it seems like there's maybe a preference. We'll work with Greystar and make sure that we come up with a unit that's going to be, desirable and leasable in the marketplace.
And how many live-work units will you have?
So the live-work units, they're on the plan here, they're the orange units. So 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, 2, 2, 2. And then the way the vertical housing tax credit thing works here, this is a little bit of an anomaly. If a project fronts on more than one street, then 100% of the ground level units or building that faces that one of the streets has to be live work. So we've got a kind of an anomaly situation where this fronts on 2 streets, but it doesn't really make sense to do 100% live work on Agnes here. And so we've put live work on these 2 units, and we've actually come up with, if you look at the plan, a pretty cool sort of an idea. This is in the floodplain. The street here is down at about elevation 34, and the floodplain's at 50.8. But there's a nice set of formal stairs that leads up to the front door here, and then there's an elevated walkway, patio, we think it's concrete, that wraps around the building, and it leads to stairs that go back down and then lead to the Esplanade here. So somebody that's on the Esplanade can go right up the stairs. They can go to the garage and go in and go up the elevator, or they can go up the stairs. And there's an accessible way to get up there too. This ramps up here, and you can walk right in on grade or go in with a wheelchair. So it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 units.
All right. Second question, in previous iterations of this development, there's been various levels of landscaping with lots of native and that kind of thing. The design you have here seems fairly minimalist. Can you talk about that choice?
We actually think that we've put in, and I would let Steve Shapiro, our landscape architect, maybe speak to that, but the landscaping along the waterfront, we've been working like crazy to try to get some nice visualizations of the project to you. And, we haven't drawn in, if you look at this map, the area that is kind of this color of green all along here and here and here is all intended to be habitat with native species. And if you know the native species, it would be things like spirea and, it would be, little maples and ashes and beeches and so forth. So a combination, whoops, we're losing a drawing. Some big leaf maples in clusters, maybe some evergreens as well. And so all of that will be native plants, native habitat and so forth, including all along the Clackamas River here and a big area here. And we're working with Pacific Habitat Services to, quantify the impacts. We do need to, dig out along the bank here, and the bank is infested with cottonwoods, which, they're widowmakers. The branches just fall off at random. So, I think the team as a whole, feels like it's going to be better to get the cottonwoods out of there and replace them with healthy native species that will grow into really high quality habitat. On the upland part that's away from the waterfront, we actually have lots of trees and landscaping. Steve, would you like to speak to that a little bit?
I can.
Name and address too, please.
My name is Steve Shapiro. I'm with Shapiro Didway Landscape Architects, and we're in Portland, Oregon. And we're in the early stages of design, you understand. But the concept is to develop a sustainable landscape that will look good throughout the year, will be drought resistant, and use as many native and drought tolerant plants as possible, because every year water is becoming more and more expensive. And that's our overall concept.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, probably before we get too far along here, Eric, what are you expecting from the commission here this evening? Is this just an overall view here? You're not expecting anything to get into the ADA or the DDA or the project itself, or any of the details, or what?
Well, basically what I would like to see is some sort of direction whether or not to move forward. And, if that is the case, then we would go into negotiations for the DDA.
Okay.
Or an amendment to the DDA, I should say.
All right.
So
I have questions relating to that. Go ahead, Dan.
I think before we go any much farther forward, I'd like to hear financing and marketing.
Is
Sorry.
the number of units changed since the previous iteration?
Rob Affleck is from Berkadia, and he with the financing. And you want to say a couple of words? Sure. If that's okay.
My name is Rob Affleck, and I live in Camas, Washington. I work for Berkadia, which is a national real estate lender. We're owned 50% by Berkshire Hathaway, so Warren Buffett. Most of you all know that.
Never heard of the guy, yeah.
And we provide the construction loans for multifamily, and they're insured by the federal government HUD. So it'd be a HUD-insured loan. So,
And what do you anticipate the project's going to cost?
cost is
Just under 90 million.
$90 million from SD Deacon there.
Okay.
Who's the general contractor. We're the lender. So.
Okay, anything else? We good? Commissioner O'Donnell?
So I have a number of questions, and they do involve moving forward to the project. And perhaps they're phrased from the investor's point of view. When I see phases, I can assume that those are sequential, 1 through 5, and they would occur in that order. And having said that, we see all the renditions, and they're very attractive. My question becomes, are the investors prepared to move forward with phases 2 and 3 prior to the resolution of the water quality and mitigation piece? Because that is such a key element to the success of this project. Are the investors prepared to do that? I don't want to get down the line and all of a sudden we're into a shoving match about what we're going to do about the water. There's a difference between living on those beautiful blue waves and living on a frog pond. Not that it's one or the other.
You know, I don't pretend to be an expert in all of the details related to this water mitigation, the habitat mitigation plan. But you know, I think the development team is willing to explore alternatives that would help facilitate getting that done. You know, as we understand it, it requires a certain amount of investment, and then it generates a certain value. And I think the hope from the development team is that some of that generated value can be set aside to maintain it long term, and you know, pay back whoever, whether it's the city or private investors that you know, end up taking on you know, the actual Phase 4 mitigation project itself.
And to that, I would say it's an issue that I think needs to be resolved, but I want the investors to be comfortable with it, and hopefully all parties to it are comfortable with it. I would consider it key to the success of the project. I also am questioning the units of parking. 2 units are 1-to-1. You get one parking place.
We actually have one, you know, we're meeting the city's code for parking is 1.6 or 1.7 cars per unit. There's one in the garage, but the other cars are, you know, in the surface parking and so forth.
The question went not to code so much as marketability.
Yeah. You know, regarding parking, what's actually happening in the development world is we're at a watershed in terms of parking demand. You know, most people still have cars, and projects are being designed with a lot of garages and parking areas. But the people that are forward-thinking are envisioning a time which may not be that far in the future, where more and more people, you know, don't have cars, autonomous cars, you know, that come pick you up and drop you off, and you don't need to have a parking space for it. So one of the big challenges that's being talked about at the Urban Land Institute and other forward-thinking places is, you know, what do we do to avoid over-parking the developments that we're doing now, but also not underpark them. You know, we don't want to underpark them now, but we don't want to have a sea of asphalt and overparking in the future. And I think, you know, we've provided a good mix here. You know, we've provided quite a lot of parking along parallel parking along the street, angled parking in front of the building, some more parallel parking here. We've actually, compared to the prior schemes, there was 28 or 9 parking stalls for North Park in this part of the site before. We've added about 20 stalls here. So there's additional parking that can help support North Park. And per the city's code, you can count street parking that's adjacent to your project towards the parking demand. And so we think, you know, that there may be some residents or guests that use some of the street parking, but I think we're confident that long-term that we've got adequate parking to support this project in this location.
Is there parallel parking on both sides of Agnes?
You know, we've explored that option. We've actually only showed it on the building side in order to leave open some opportunity for stormwater, you know, bioswales and so forth to treat the stormwater from Agnes on this side. And, you know, we don't think we need it. We think it'll look better without having too much parking there. But, you know, if that's something the city's interested in, we could certainly explore, you know, even more parking on the other side of Agnes there.
What was the thought process in increasing the number of units from 378 to 400? And do you feel that'll have any influence on marketability?
You know, as the design evolved a little bit, you know, that's how the buildings, you know, kind of worked out. We've got floor plans for some of the buildings on the wall here. We've got all of the floor plans and the unit plans all worked out. You know, we think we've got a very good mix of units. There's some studios. It's primarily 2 bedrooms, 1 and 2 bedroom units with some studios and some 3 bedrooms, and then the live work units.
I guess the final question on the vertical tax credit. My understanding is that only applies to units directly above retail establishments.
Well, on a project like this, it will apply to the entire project. On the Phase 1 project, there's commercial in these two buildings, and the vertical housing tax credit applies to all 244 units in all of the buildings. So, under the state's, program, there are rules about, if the building fronts a street and, if it's one or two streets and, whether it's an average of 2 floors or 3 floors or 4 floors, how it all works. But we'll be complying with the requirements for the state program for that.
Perhaps the next question is best addressed internally about what's our derived tax revenue and how's it deferred by the way this is structured. I think maybe I can ask you guys that later.
That's a Wyatt question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Commissioner Hyde.
Couple questions about, I noticed in one of the drawings that there was, you could see the wastewater plant in the background. I couldn't see it. And, it's such beautiful drawings and place to live, and then it's so right next to that wastewater plant. Is there any kind of screening or what's the plan?
There's landscape screening, and you'd actually be surprised at how many really nice, expensive projects are built right next to a wastewater plant. My in-laws just sold a $3 million condominium in Tiburon, California that's backs right up to the wastewater treatment plant. So, I think it's been designed in such a way that we have screening and so forth, and there's not very many units that look out that way. So I think it shouldn't be a problem here.
And then you just commented on that there wasn't a long-term leasability to use their property. It's probably not something that we should have time to discuss here, but it just seems like that there'd be some kind of negotiating that could be done to encourage them to let us use that property.
Well, I think, one of the big challenges in Oregon City is parking for visitors and so forth. And, if the city could strike a deal for 20 years or even longer and build a parking area here, as the Falls is redeveloped and the Riverwalk and the downtown is redeveloped and, the tourism flow increases, this could be a wonderful place for people to park and, take the trolley or take transit and, and go experience the rest of Oregon City.
Well, or for events at North Park.
Absolutely, events at the North Park.
I think the bigger issue, Commissioner Ide, with that is that Wes and Tri-City/CCSD1, as they anticipate growth in the future, they're looking at, you don't want to relocate. I mean, it's impossible to relocate that plant, so they're going to have to expand. So they need access to that property, and I think they're anticipating that it's going to be sooner rather than later, probably in the 30 to 40 year range rather than in the long term. I think you guys were talking about what?
I think it was 60 or 70 or 80 years, something like that.
So I think that's the big hang up. I think as our relationship with Clackamas County continues to improve, that there's a possibility that we could develop some kind of a joint agreement to utilize some of that as either overflow parking for the North Park or something else.
Okay, and then my other question was the mitigating the noise from I-205. Are you planning to use any kind of construction materials that would help with that?
We'll certainly design the buildings, factoring that in. We have included, if you look at the landscaping along the edge here, the darker green would be something like an incense cedar, an evergreen, which doesn't get too wide, but it's very full and bushy and provides, some degree of sort of cutting down, the noise. And I think we'll do an analysis. We've got an acoustic consultant that we work with, and we may end up putting in different windows on certain units on that side where it's determined that might be an issue. One of the other things that we've done, the water feature in the fountain will be the kind of water feature with little waterfalls and some splashing that makes noise. And what that does is when you see the water there and you hear a little bit of splash, your brain sort of switches all of the road noise from the freeway and it thinks it's the water. It's really an amazing phenomenon.
Lloyd, if I could
add something there. There will be air conditioning.
Absolutely, absolutely. So.
On a hot day, you don't have to open the window.
Right, right. I think the plan right now is based on using mini splits. If you're familiar with that, it's sort of kind of the latest thing. So it's, the buildings are designed with a roof well in the middle of the roof, so it's a gently sloped roof and then a flat area in the top. So all the condenser units for the air conditioners will be, either up on the roof or on the wall down, above the flood elevation down in the garage. And the mini splits provide both heating and cooling for the units.
We're installing one at my mom's house on Monday.
And last question, I noticed that I didn't see a lot of lighting in there, but, is there any plan for, lighting that's going to be unattractive and unwelcome, but.
If you look at the building elevations here, wherever the buildings are facing out towards the street, there are columns, there are piers that are 12 to 14 feet on center. And you see here, there's a sconce wall light mounted on each one of those. So the intent is to have low-intensity light that's closely spaced, that doesn't, create these super high-intensity, bright sort of pools of light, and then so forth. We haven't gotten into whether or not the Esplanade is lit at night or not, and our anticipation is that as we move forward with the design, there'll be the normal process with the city planning and the city's design review process. And I think the development team here is committed to coming back to you folks and showing you what we're up to and letting you get your 2 cents in as well. But in general, we'd like to avoid big tall poles with really bright lights. I would envision maybe in the central plaza, the bosks of trees there might have some very gentle uplighting, so that it creates a kind of a mood. But a combination of the wall sconces and uplighting and low lights wherever we can.
Okay.
So if I may make a suggestion at this point, since we didn't get an opportunity as the commission to have a chance to go around and kind of look at all these things, maybe we take 15 or 20 minutes and Tony?
I was just going to say, before we do that, could I just ask 2 questions real quick that might?
Yeah.
No?
I can wait.
No, go ahead.
I think Commissioner O'Donnell had something as well.
I think Mr. Hill's done a great job representing the project. I am very cautious and I am concerned about the water mitigation piece and the sequence of events. And Mr. Underwood is asking, should we proceed? I would be much more comfortable if there's a firm agreement in place as to who was going to do what and when. And what I do not want to do is get downstream and we encounter this landmine where we're adversarial. That's my main concern about this entire project.
Isn't that on the DDA though, Eric, when we do that, that's all going to be addressed on that?
At a certain phase, and I believe that's not required.
Right.
So it's up to the commission whether they want to negotiate that.
Right. Is that?
I think I don't know if you can answer this right now. I noticed that there was a little bit of cut as it relates to the Esplanade. How does that relate to what the average high water is during the winter? Is there an expectation that the Esplanade's open unless there's a big event?
All year round. So the water outfall that's over here next to phase 1, we monitored that all winter long here this last winter. And I think the water level was maybe a little higher than normal this last winter. And if you go out and look at that concrete structure, it was a foot or 2 or 3 feet below the top of that structure, which is about elevation 23.
Okay.
22, 23.
And
so
you're proposing a low of about 30?
So the Esplanade here goes from, the Main Street elevation here, which is 32 or 33, essentially level, 32 or 33 to this point here, and then it rises up at about 5% to about 42 here. Actually, I think it's maybe 46 here, so that we can get up to 53 here. So we're 53 here, and then it steps down 1.5 feet, and then it slopes down a couple of feet. And so this is elevated, pretty close to the current levels, which, doesn't flood typically. And then it slopes back down, from here to there, back down to 32 or 3 or 4, and is level. And then from here, it slopes up to 40. So I think it's clearly above. And in fact, the Phase 5 ramps, our expectation is that this half of this ramp would generally not flood except in pretty extreme events. And this platform that provides access to this sloped ramp would be not flooded, so the docks could rise up to that level and you could have access to boating, during anything but a 96 kind of flood.
So I guess my second question builds on a little bit of what Commissioner O'Donnell, I think one of the weaknesses of the current DDA are some unknown agreements as to payment or construction of certain amenities after all the units are built. When we look at this in terms of a beach or North Park or the dock, and as you said with the water quality in stage 4, that would be the city or another private investor. Is that the same expectation on the dock and the North Park, or are there system development charges expected to be reimbursed? I think that's been one of the weaknesses.
Yeah, those are good questions. We had a meeting here a week or so ago with our parks director here, and I know, he's in a position where he's got lots of people that have a lot of things that he'd like to, spend his money on, and not the least of which is the Riverwalk, which is sucking all the oxygen out of the air and, wanting as much funding as it can get. We wanted to show him what we were thinking, could happen here. And I think this could be a wonderful asset for the community at large. Now, how does it get funded? If it's something that needs to be funded by, the developers that are developing the units that are along here, just the reality of the economics of it mean that it would need to be scaled down and it would have to be less expensive and, less of an asset for the community as a whole. On the other hand, if we can get through this impasse with the Urban Renewal Agency, or if the city would, allow the SDC charges that are generated from this project to be reinvested into the Esplanade and the North Park, that could allow for something, which is a more expensive kind of development for the amenities along the waterfront here.
So is there an expectation that for phase 2 and phase 3, when the Esplanade's constructed, that there will be SDC credits for that?
I know that is something that the development group would very much like to have worked out, yes.
Okay. So I think there'll be more to come on that.
More to come, yes. Commissioner Migler.
I know it's early on, but do you have a idea about the average rental rates that you'd be looking at for this project?
No, I would let Scott tackle that one. I do know that the original pro formas for the garden apartments pro forma'd out at a substantially lower rate than they're currently based on what's happened in the market as a whole. And, so I think, Scott, do you want to?
Sure, I'll give it a try. Get out our crystal ball.
Yeah.
2 years. By the way, I didn't give my name and residence, Scott Watson. I'm with Graystar. I live in Lake Oswego. Rental rates for the project are higher than what exists now for an average renter in Oregon City. It's probably going to be something in the order of $250, $260 minimum a square foot by the time we get through this project.
So what does that come to for a one-bedroom?
Probably going to start in the high teens, $1,900, $2,000 a month kind of thing for a one-bedroom, I would expect. And a three-bedroom could, this is all subject to what we ultimately get here, could easily be above the threes, Is that fair to say? Yes. Questions?
That's it, thanks.
You bet.
Anything else?
Well, like I said, I think we should take some time. They spent a lot of time putting all this stuff up here, and very little of it was actually in the PowerPoint display. So
we're gonna
maybe we take a few minutes
to do. You can wander around here, but we've also got to unload this room tonight too with Katie. So let's keep that in mind. She's going to need assistance to help put this back in order here, so.
We've got some manpower to help, so.
All right, good, good.
Sorry, just before we
Yeah.
we break there, thank you, Lloyd. I know you put in a lot of long hours and
There's still,
shows. It's
there's
great.
still some questions here.
Sure, okay, before we break, I just want
Okay.
to introduce the Deacon team as well. So this
Yeah.
is Steve Deacon and his team there. He just flew in now. And as Lloyd mentioned as well, we're fortunate to have him as a contractor, and we're working to have him as a partner.
Good,
So,
good.
I mean,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
thank
and
you very
just to advance that cause a little bit, having worked in the electrical industry for 25 years, I've worked on probably 50 Deacon projects, and we're extremely fortunate to have Deacon be part of this project team. Probably one of the 5 or 6 premier builders in the state of Oregon.
Okay, so,
Steve, do you want to say anything?
David, I would love to.
name and residence, city. please.
Yeah, my name is Steve Deacon. I'm the CEO of Deacon Construction. I live in Portland. And we've been in business here since 1981. And we currently have offices on the West Coast. We're in Seattle, Sacramento, Pleasanton, and Irvine. I was a little late getting here today because I flew back from our Irvine office this afternoon. But we're really pleased to have a chance to be part of this project, both as a general contractor and it looks like as a co-developer with Hudson, which is exciting to us on both fronts. So, I mean, this is our home. We've been here in business for 36 years, and we always do our best to try to enhance whatever project we're involved with. So we appreciate the opportunity on both parts.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right. So Lloyd, I think we've got a couple more questions. I didn't get to me yet here, so I think the big one was, I just want to make sure, just for everybody's information here, because this all started out as apartments built as condos. We've got to make sure that we've clarified that these just are apartments now. I'm going to built as apartments.
They're built as apartments, and I don't know how much experience, you folks have with the whole development, world. Building condominiums is a real challenge because of the legal liability issues. And with that said, we've designed these in a manner that they'll have individual meters, and they'll have a lot of the things that would be designed into a condominium project, and it's not out of the realm of possibilities that it might convert into a condominium at some point in the future. But it's just so much legal risk and capital that gets tied up that it really, there's only, I think, 2 condominium projects going on in Portland, right now out of all of the stuff that's happening.
That's the conversation I run into outside of here is, are there condos? Are they condos? We're going to move down over their condos. And
I had a conversation with Mr. Graymore, which I don't know if you guys know Graymore Development, but they've done many, many, many projects around. They have a huge project going on the waterfront in Vancouver right now. And we go to the same barber, so we were hanging out. He said, I've got 2,500 people that want to be on a list to buy a condominium. Do you know anybody that wants to help me develop condominiums? And it's just a real challenge,
Yeah.
So when you say separate meters, is that both electrical and water?
I think with the new technology, you can put inline electronically monitored meters for water in systems without too much expense. So I think there would be individual meters, on the buildings. But there may also be inline meters for things like if we have gas on the gas lines or water on the water lines.
Okay.
We're still early in that process. We haven't made all those decisions. So.
Okay. Agnes is coming through your project, and it comes down from west, and it stops and stops. What's the kind of the distance between the start and stop here for Agnes here, and what happens there?
I apologize. I've had a pretty rigid graphic standard in my office for 25 years. It's been 25 years now I like doing the squares. And the square, bit us a little bit because Agnes goes about this far off the sheet here. But the idea is that would be connecting, over to the end of the Agnes on the other side here. ODOT doesn't want it to connect through right now.
Right.
I don't know how that gets solved long term.
Yeah.
But there'll be bollards here and bollards there, and I think what's been discussed in the prior versions is that you do sort of a half-street section here so that it's pedestrians and bikes. But from a flood point of view, Main Street's flooded, and Phase 1 has a backdoor access, exit out the corner here that gets to, above the flood zone, so they have an exit out. We're designing this so that Agnes, from the time you get here, is entirely above the 100-year flood, and the Agnes extension is above the 100-year flood, so that anybody here, even during the 96 flood, you can come and go, get out.
So you could still use Agnes in an emergency situation.
Absolutely.
That was part of the deal with ODOT when we started this process, was no access from the Tri-City side into Agnes because of the current configuration of 205, 213 interchange.
Yeah.
So it was agreed to that it would be utilized for bike ped and then an emergency access in those situations of a big water event.
There's talk about, the feds, redoing, spending money on 205, other lanes on the Abernathy Bridge, et cetera. Is there anything in the long-term planning with ODOT for fixes for any of that?
No.
Any of that?
No, we don't have funding yet for a new interchange at 213, 205. We addressed some of the interchange or some of the
jug handle
with the jug handle, but not off of the interstate itself yet.
Mm-hmm.
So probably lastly, you've got some retail space there. Do you envision who would be in that kind of down in this Cove area would have retail down, or what do you think that would be?
Well, so one of my guys, spent an hour or two, one of these renderings here of the plaza. I'm not sure which one. There's a cool sign that says Oregon City Kayaks or something, and there are a bunch of kayaks in the window. And one of the other shops, we had a whole bunch of bicycles there.
Okay.
And I think we know some business people that are in those businesses that would love to have an opportunity out in this kind of an area. I think with this number of units here, probably a small sandwich shop or a deli or that sort of thing would do very well.
Yeah.
Convenience foods, pick up your quart of milk and, yogurt or kombucha or whatever it is that you want. So, we don't have a huge amount of commercial space here, but we think there'll be good uses for it.
Yeah, because there's going to be probably 1,000 people living in that area.
I
a little bit
think,
of a market down there would be good.
Scott, what do you think the average occupancy per unit with our mix would be? 2.25 or something? 2.5. So we'd have 1,000 people just in this project, plus the 244 units times 2.5 is, it's another 1,500, or another 750.
What do you think about 1,700 folks?
1,700, yeah.
Okay.
There's no grocery stores in the area.
Yeah. We're not going to talk traffic and stuff down there in those interchanges. And, anyway. Good. All right.
Okay.
We have a comment, citizen comment we'd like to hear too, please. Matthew Ray, would you like to speak here?
I would. Also, do you mind distributing these to the visitors?
Thanks.
All right, thank you. My name is Matthew Reeg. I am a resident of Canby and also program administrator for Rivers of Life Center, which is also based in Canby and has conducted many projects in the area. I am here on behalf of my boss, Jerry Herman, who has had a large hand in the Cove in that area for many years. He has been awarded a grant to rehabilitate 7 acres right in that Cove area. I think probably a little bit more to the north. His old headquarters was that northwest peninsula where I worked for about 3 years with him there. In front of you is a letter that he and I drafted together just in support of the Cove and general support for the economic boost that it presents. This letter is written in support of Clackamas Cove and the efforts of the City of Oregon City and design and development teams. Rivers of Life Center has worked with the Oregon City's Urban Renewal Commission, developer interests, and others to support the advancement and completion of Clackamas Cove in Oregon City's North End District. We know this area extremely well and mobilized many cleanups of the area. The project has had a negative assessed value of $12 million negative. It is our understanding that the city's investments to date have been less than $5 million. Efforts of the development team have corrected many of the deficiencies of the site and have easily brought the former negative value to that of a positive asset ready to blossom. Vertical housing, tax abatement, like we heard minutes ago, and other processes that the city and the developer embraced have made this project possible in a bad economy. Previous developers who we met along the way talked about laying the landscape flat and riprap armoring all the basin's edges of the cove. At that time, the cove was ready to be invaded by the Clackamas River. We worked hard to get the permits in place with the city's engineer to abate that problem. All is now ready for the $150 million project final built out value to become an attraction to the region. We think this is remarkable, now being remediated to the benefit of the community. And our reasons for supporting this project are twofold. First, Oregon City has been challenged by brown fields at Rossman's landfill, and to a lesser degree, Clackamas Cove. This project will at least bring value and beauty to one of those challenged areas. And secondly, we were asked by the Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Oregon Fish and Wildlife, and others to quantify the uniqueness of Clackamas Cove as a significant wildlife and fisheries area. We worked hard to bring the Lower Harbor Trust Fund mitigation program to Clackamas Cove. All is ready to celebrate people and wildlife in a harmonious way, as did John Gray at Salishan, Sun River, and Skamania Lodge. This project is well along. The brownfields have been discovered and are mostly remediated. And most importantly, the project is ready to be completed by very qualified professionals. We urge you to move this project forward and build upon the community investment thus far. Thank you for your time and considerations.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Mr. Van Haverbeek, do you have anything for us tonight? Steve?
There it is. No, I don't have any questions at this time.
All right, thank you. Okay.
Take 10 minutes and walk around, come back, or?
And come back, or?
Yeah, see if we have any.
I think so, you know, let folks mingle with the project team, ask questions about different things, and then we can come back and ask those questions.
Let's resume in 10 minutes, okay?
Okay.
we are going to move forward here again here. I think there was maybe a couple more questions here. Commissioner Mingelberg.
Yeah, I have several questions. One is I'm not clear, I guess I got conflicting information about who would be envisioned to fund the marina and the North Park Amphitheater. Originally, I was thinking that it was the development that would cover that, but then it seemed like there was an ask that the city or the Urban Renewal District be a participant in that with SDC charges or something. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, so the second phase of the project, we're talking about the second and third phases. So the second phase is the 6 buildings in the middle, and the third phase is the 2 on the end. But the second phase of the project includes construction of Agnes Avenue. From Agnes ends here, so it would construct Agnes Avenue plus the half street extension all the way over to provide accessibility. It'll build the public parking along Agnes here. It'll build the public parking that's adjacent to the North Park here. The North Park has been already pretty much graded to the final elevations that we're talking about here and seeded with grass. So it would put in the sidewalks in this little amphitheater stage and finish the landscaping there. And then it'll build the Esplanade all along here, including the landscaping and so forth along the Esplanade and up between the building.
So you're showing that Esplanade is 20 feet wide, and that's part of the project?
That is part of the project.
Part of the developer-funded project.
Each one of these nodes is a little more than 20 feet wide.
Okay.
And we don't know for sure what it's paved with, whether it's asphalt or concrete or, our Canadian partners. I don't know if you've ever been up to Vancouver, BC, but they have extensive esplanades along the seawalls, and they've asked us to explore, and we talked with your parks guy about possibly having, rather than just the typical asphalt or concrete, maybe we have concrete at the nodes and then use decomposed granite, which is very finely ground and packed down, and it meets the accessibility requirements. And it doesn't save any money, but it gives a softer feel, a little bit more of a natural feel. And, I think it might, it might be a really cool thing to do here. And, I know we found a project up in Bend that was just done using that kind of a pathway and a similar accessible thing. So then the final thing that would be part, it would be the grading down to the finished grades along here, including digging out for the future sandy beach. And revegetating with native species, spirea and vine maples and big leaf maples and, all kinds of native species to provide habitat along here, and also providing habitat, as the buffer over here. So that's all part of phase 2. So the parts that wouldn't be included would be, building the natural playground here, finishing the sandy beach here, doing the sandy beach here, and, getting the permits and so forth to put in the docks and so forth. I know the Sea Scouts are here. They've been, talking about this, for a long time. And, the docks, it may take some creativity. I mean, right now there's a dock that the county has that's out here. They're saying, don't destroy it, save it, we can fix it up. And, there's already pilings in over here. So this vision might not happen overnight, but it's a huge opportunity. And I think once you put a vision out there, I think people have a way of figuring out how to make it work. So I know the development group really wants to make that happen somehow. And we'll be partners in trying to figure out the best way to do that.
Okay. And my second question is, what happens in a flood event with the possible cars underneath the buildings? Is there an emergency evacuation plan? Is that a property management responsibility?
So the property management group will have a policy related to this. And I assume a lot of you have been here since 96. I mean, I was here in 96. We knew 3 days, 4 days ahead that the flood was coming. And anybody who cared to, had an opportunity to pack their stuff up and get it to safe ground. So if you're here, then the management's going to give fair warning for a flood like that, and you can get your car out of the garage. And there'll probably be storage down here for kayaks and paddleboards and bikes and stuff like that. So there'll be a plan in place to get those to, safe ground.
Okay. Thank you.
So the existing sheriff's building down there too, I think, is that going to be the Sea Scouts? We're going to work on that, or?
Yeah, we would love to, include them in this process and figure out a way. I mean, we've drawn what, we sort of put out the big vision here. I mean, this dock is 600 feet long. It doesn't have to be that big.
Yeah.
But, having a cool swim dock and a boating dock and maybe some kind of a, future water sports activity center where you don't have to schlep your kayak up and down, and there's places to store things down there. I mean, I could see this being a little sailing club. Maybe there's a, way to make that happen. This is a better place to sail than where they have the sailing clubs along the Willamette, or probably even over in the Columbia, a lot of places.
Okay, good. All right, any other questions here, folks?
So I don't have a question, but I have a statement I want to make. So as we all know, this has been a long and sometimes painful process for the last 10 years to get to this point. And I know that even as much as just a few weeks ago, we were thinking we were at the end and we were going to have to start over from scratch. Lloyd called me, and I went over and sat down with these guys, and they gave me a much longer version of this than what we've had tonight. But that convinced me that I wanted to be able to have the opportunity for you folks to see everything that they had shown me, which is why we moved the venue and we moved the day so that we had ample time to be able to see everything and really ask all the questions. But my confidence level has gone through the roof compared to where we were before, especially with the addition of SD Deacon and with the rest of the project team, whether it's finance or marketing, landscape architecture. Obviously, we all know Lloyd, but to have the whole package in place, we've never seen this before. So from my standpoint, I think we need to let now staff move forward with the project team and see how things develop.
So I didn't talk about timing. It always comes up. I figured somebody would ask. So, we've, over the last several years, been through a couple of master plan projects, and they have been a challenge. It always seems like it takes longer than you want it to take. We're working with Dowell, the same civil engineers that are doing the first phase. I think they're a fine group. And I think jointly the recommendation here is that we should divide this into an amendment to the conceptual development plan and get that processed. And then as soon as the amendment is finished, to have a detailed development plan, the design review piece, submitted. Now, we're basically just about ready for design review here. I mean, we haven't had the latest pre-app with Laura and her team, but we know the code really well. And, I think we're checking all the boxes. So I'm not particularly concerned. I think we've got a really experienced team that knows what they're doing here. The development team would love to be in construction next summer. That will be a huge lift for us to accomplish. Our schedule right now calls for us to submit the conceptual development plan in 2 weeks. We're just about ready to do that. John Van Staveren is working on the environmental, habitat stuff right now. The engineers are, working on the planning submittal and so forth. And if we do that, and if we're allowed to submit the design review concurrent while the CDP is going through the process, and then hear it, I think there's a chance we can be in the ground next summer. And we don't want to promise that. There's been too many promises that haven't happened. So I think it is entirely possible that Murphy could stick his nose into this, and in spite of best efforts, we don't get it in the ground next summer. I think we certainly could have it in the ground the following spring, spring 2019. So there will be some challenges. One of the challenges we had on phase one was just all of the land use and the permits took so long to get going that by the time we finally had the permits, it was September, October, and then we had the wettest year ever. And, we've got a whole bunch of dirt to push around here. We'd love to be able to get going on that next August, next summer and get it done. So, I think we've got the right team in place, and I think we can do it. It might take a little bit of, figuring out with the city and staff. And I know, we've asked John for favors on a couple of things, and some of the staff have been a little reluctant to review the engineering plans before the land use is all finalized, that sort of thing. So, I think if we can all push for this vision, I think we can get it in the ground next summer.
Well, the only comment I have to make to that is that even if the city commission and the Urban Renewal Commission and staff are all 100% moving forward for a yes on this project, that we still have a small group of anti-folks in the city that will, appeal and appeal and appeal. So I just want you to be aware that, there's almost nothing that we can do about that.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure we've got a good legal team on board to cross the T's and dot the I's. And we'll do our best to try to convince, everybody that this is a good thing for the city.
Okay. Eric, do you need a motion here or just a consensus here, or what would you like from us?
Actually, I think a motion would.
Motion, okay.
I would move that we proceed forward with the project and the project team, authorizing Mr. Underwood to continue negotiations in whatever method he sees fit.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Katie?
Commissioner Holliday?
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Ide?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Simply because of the concerns I voiced and for that we need to clarify a number of things that were stated, I'll say no for the moment, but I am in favor of the project.
Commissioner Van Haverbeek?
Aye.
And Chair Shaw?
Aye.
The motion passes.
Okay, good. Thank you, folks. I do want to, recognize too that Ed Darrow and his group, has really got this project, spent a lot of time on this. I do want to recognize them for the work that they have done on this, but I also want to say congratulations on your project here and what you've done for us here tonight too. So, okay, we're done with that one. We've got two items here, the minutes of June 21st and July 5th.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and approved. Katie?
Commissioner Holliday?
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Ide?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Van Haverbeek?
Aye.
Chair Shaw?
Aye. Any future agenda items over here? Okay, good. We are city manager's report.
I don't have anything for tonight.
All right, we're adjourned.